Hello everybody, it's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique. In my previous tutorials, I did a review, a basic bead weaving 101 review of basic flat netting, both vertical and horizontal. We talked about varying the number of beads in our little segments from 3 beads to 5 beads and on. I showed you guys how to determine how many beads you need to pick up to start your piece of beadwork. And then we also talked about doing the turnarounds. Well, today I want to teach you guys a different way of doing your turnarounds, one that creates a pointed tip on the ends of your beadwork, just to give you a different design element when you're working with netting. So to get started, I'm going to be working with 5 bead vertical netting again. And I went ahead and did my initial pickup, and I picked up my odd number of beads, starting with a crossover bead and ending with a crossover bead, but making sure that I have 3.5 segments of my full set of 5 beads on here. So here's 1 set, here's 2 sets, 3 sets, and there's my half. And then I'm picking up my turnaround beads, ended with a crossover bead. So my turnaround beads are going to be a 1 full 5 bead segment, 2 seed beads crossover, 2 seed beads, and then I'm going to do a half segment, which is a crossover bead and 2 seed beads. I am going to drop those just off my needle. I'm going to skip this last crossover bead that I picked up before my turnaround beads, and I'm going to go through the next one above it. I'll pull that all into place. And now I've completed that basic turnaround, which you will start with a basic turnaround, even though we're going to change it up here in just a minute. So now we're just going to sew up through to the top using our 5 beads, same 5 bead segment like we did in the previous video, in the previous tutorial. I'm going to pick up my 2 seed beads, cross over 2 seed beads. I will skip the next rondelle and sew up through the next one to create my netting. You can just repeat that until I get to the last bead on the row, which will be right next to my stop bead. Picked up my beads on my segment, skipping one, sewing through the next on the crossovers right there. Then I have 1 more to do. And I'm just using the same beads I used in the previous tutorial. You can basically use any beads you want. I just suggest that you, for beginners, to pick a crossover bead that is quite a bit different from your seed beads, so you can see what you're doing, and it makes it easier to learn. So there I have sewn in my last segment of beads, and I'm now coming out of the very first crossover bead I started with, and my stop bead is right next to it, just like that. So I'm exiting from one of my crossover beads, which is this rondelle, and I want to make a tip point here at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads and a crossover bead. Then I'm going to pick up 1 extra seed bead, and I'm going to let that drop down to the beadwork. Then I am going to skip that last seed bead, and I'm going to sew back down through the rondelle. And I'm going to pull that all together and create this little tip here at the top, just like that. So that this is what my beadwork looks like. Now to complete the turnaround, I am going to be sewing into this first crossover bead that's poking out here on the left for me because I'm left-handed. So in order to match up the netting, all I need to do is pick up my 5 bead segment. So I'm going to pick up 2 11s, crossover 2 11s, and I'm sewing into the very next sticking out crossover bead, pulling that in. So there I have a cute little picot point, or not a picot, but a pointed tip in my crossover section. So I'm going to flip my work because I just prefer to sew upwards. Now I would just sew up the remainder of the row using my 5 bead segment, which is the 2 11-ohs, a crossover bead, 2 11-ohs. I'm going to skip the indented rondelle here and sew through the next one, sticking outwards. And repeat that a couple more times till I come to the end of the row. Pick up my 5 bead segment, skip the indented rondelle, and sew through the next one. And I'll show you the turnaround a couple more times. So let me sew on my last 5 bead segment. Picking up my 5 beads, skipping the indented rondelle, and sewing through the next crossover bead. So now I want to make my point on this end of the beadwork. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 2 of our 11 seed beads, the crossover bead, plus 1 extra seed bead. Let those drop down. Skip over that last 11 and sew through just the rondelle back in the opposite direction. And pull. And if your bead gets pulled farther away than you need for it to be, just hold on to that last little 11 and give it a nice tug like that, and it will bring the beads up to the beadwork just like that. So now we're going to be sewing into this rondelle, so we just need to pick up our 5 bead segment again. So this changes the turnaround quite a bit. Pick up the 5 beads, skip the indented rondelle here, and sew through the one sticking out. So not only do we get a totally different look, but it changes the way that we do the turnaround. So now that we've done the turnaround, we would just simply be stitching back up with our 5 bead segment. We're exiting from this rondelle, skip the indented, and sew up through the next. After you have picked up your 5 bead sequence, just like that. Now this is the actual step-by-step instructions from the Bead and Button Bead Stitching Handbook review, which leaves this end right here looking quite different than our pointed ends. Alright, let's just keep going up to the end here. We'll show you the turn, the point tipped turn one more time. So pick up your seed bead, 2 seed beads, cross over 2 seed beads, skip the indented rondelle, sew up through the one sticking out, and one more set. Get my beads picked up, skip the indented one, and sew through the next. Just like that. And then once again, for creating the tip, we're going to pick up 2 11-0s, the rondelle, plus 1 more 11-0. Let them drop down to the beadwork. Skip that last 11-0. Let's just sew right back through just the rondelle. Then pick up a segment. And come through the very next rondelle sticking out, which is right here. So there we go. So that is how you can change the look of the turnaround on your flat netting. So I really did not like the way that that looked at the start here with that regular turnaround. So what I did was I pulled off my stop bead, and I pulled off several of the beads that were part of that turnaround loop. And what I wound up leaving on was this segment right here. I threaded a new, just a little wide-eye, big-eye needle onto my thread there. I then stitched those 5 beads and went up through that crossover bead that we started from initially, because right there's my tail thread. It was the very first bead I picked up. Stitched back up through there, took the needle off, and stuck my stop bead back on. And I just have to say I like the looks of that a lot better than the way that I showed you initially, which is straight out of the Bead Stitching Handbook. I think it just looks more uniform and looks better this way. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but just little idiosyncrasies like that drive me nuts when I'm actually working and designing. So anyhow, here I am back, and I'm just going to go ahead and continue on with my picking up my 5 bead sequence and stitching up to the opposite end of the beadwork to complete this row. Now I have one more to do. I just wasn't satisfied with the way that looked or felt in my fingers. So here I am. I've got my last 5 beads onto my needle. I'm sewing up through the last sticking out rondelle. And I'll show you the turn one last time. So we're exiting from this rondelle. We're going to pick up 2 seed beads, one of our crossover beads, and then one last 11-0 seed bead, and drop it down. We are going to skip that last 11-0, and we're going to sew back in the opposite direction down through just our rondelle to create the point. Pull it nice and snug so that the beads sit where they should on the beadwork like that. And then we're just going to pick up the next 5 bead segment. 2 11-0s crossover and 2 11-0s, and then we would just continue on stitching back through the sticking out beads of our previous row and carry on like that. But that is really cute. It's the first time that I've attempted it, but now that I have it figured out, I really like it. Just makes a really pretty look on the ends. All right, guys, that's it for today. I appreciate you guys hanging out and beading with me. Thanks for subscribing to my channel if you already have. If you haven't, go ahead and click subscribe. And if you click the little bell, you'll be notified when I post my next series of videos. Head over to my website and my blog, A Jeweler's Life. It's on the alluringbeadboutique.com. There's links here and in the description box below, links in the eye up above. When you get over there, if you want, you can subscribe to the Bead Mat newsletter. You can add your email to follow my blog, which I highly suggest. I do a lot of work over there that doesn't ever make it to YouTube, or it does make it to my, my social media, such as my Facebook page, which is the Alluring Bead Boutique on Facebook, Instagram. I think I'm the Alluring Beader on Pinterest. Anyway, I have all my links here on YouTube as well as on the website. All right, folks, that's it for today. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.